Hey y'all, Miss Ladybug here. Gosh, we're almost at the end of 2021. Can you believe it? So much has been going on in the last few years. I have passed my 5-year mark off benzodiazepines in October and opiates clear back in May. Woo! I'm like 5.5 years off opiates. That's still mind blowing, I have to say, and 5 years off benzos. I just have to kind of let that moment sink in sometimes. And on the 1st, it'll be 4 years that I have been pharmacologically free of routine meds for anything. The longest I've taken anything was I had a prescription for a very low dose, 2.5 up to 5 milligrams, and back down to 2.5 milligrams of a corticosteroid when I had COVID and I was extraordinarily ill. And I have to say that it did help. I was really grateful for that medication at that time. I was so sick. But otherwise, I haven't taken anything routinely other than vitamins and supplements. And cannabis. Yay, me! Yay, cannabis! Oh. Anyway, I decided since it was this 5-year mark, and I'm really hopeful for a brighter 2022, that I decided I would do a 3-part series for the end of the year. And I couldn't find my stand, so I have a stand for my camera so I can set it up and move about and punch buttons, and it's much nicer. But I couldn't find it, so we're just gonna go with this way for the first one because I'm in the mood. And when you've gone through what I've gone through, you do things when you feel they're appropriate. So I feel it's appropriate today. Anyway, so this is going to be a 3-part series. The first is going to be how the medication madness began. That's going to be this one. We're going to talk about prior to taking medications and when they first started and over the beginning years of me taking meds. Then it's going to be part 2 is the years of tapering, withdrawal, and detox. That's a saga. That is a saga. And then the final one that's going to propel us and propel me into 2022 and to even better things going on is today and hopes for tomorrow. So, thanks for checking in. I'm always amazed. I just have to tell you, when I started chronicling this journey, there was something in me that told me that I needed to. Back in 2015. I wished I would have started this clear back in 1985 when it began. Well, maybe even longer before then, but I'm really grateful for this platform, for the people who respond, for the people that feel inspired, for being able to share possibilities of a different way of thinking of things. My life is full of gratitude today, but it hasn't always been that way. So anyway, how the medication madness began. Let's give you some background about me. So my early childhood, I was born to children. My mother was 15 and 3 months. My father was 16 years old when I was conceived. they were allowed to marry before they were 16, or while they were 16 for my father. I don't know how these things happen, but it happened. And they were allowed to raise me. They came from middle class America. My paternal grandparents, my grandfather was chief dispatcher for Southern Pacific Railroad. My grandmother for many years was a stay-at-home mom. Her middle child had some health issues, had a seizure disorder, but I think during middle school or high school, she went back to work working for Farmers Insurance. My maternal grandparents, my grandfather worked in the logging industry in the Pacific Northwest, as well as did my grandmother. She worked for Georgia Pacific Industries for 25 years. So they were very established families. Everything I saw, there was happiness for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there were issues that I didn't know about. My maternal grandparents, my grandfather had a previous family. Hi, Chris, my cousin and his sisters and my aunties from my grandfather's first marriage. I'm so grateful for those lovely people in my life. And my grandmother was younger, and they adopted my mother. So my mother was an only adopted child, and my father was the youngest of three. One went on to college and was very bright. One had, as I said, a seizure disorder, had a front lobal brain injury from an injury as a child. And so that was a big financial and emotional concern of the family, I'm sure. And then my father was the youngest. So anyway, I was born in 1962. My parents were assisted in buying a home when I was about 3 years old. We lived with my grandparents early, and then they had a rental, and then they bought a house. And I remember I was tested very early, and I tested with a very high IQ, and was put into a special preschool because of that. Shortly after that, things started to deteriorate for my parents. They started having lots of parties. They had become 21. They'd bought a house. They were trying to entertain. They were trying to be grown-ups, and it didn't go well for them. And anyway, by the age of 7, they had sold our house that we were living in, and then we were back into rentals, and there was a lot of problems with the alcohol. By the age of 9, I had my first moment of being abandoned. I was delivered to my grandparents' house and dropped off with no understanding of what was going on. And I didn't see my parents that I remember. Maybe they came to visit, but I don't remember seeing them for a year and a half until they were divorced and my mother had a new man in her life. And I don't remember what was going on with my father at that particular time. That was also right before those years was my first physical, sexual being molested, was when I was 8. And so then between 9 and 11, I went and I was left at my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, and it was the closest thing to a loving, normal home that I had my entire childhood. It was wonderful. I had neighborhood friends. I had people who participated in my extracurricular activities, showed up when I was doing a swim meet, or showed up when I had a drama performance, or came to my parent-teacher conferences on time. It was awesome. Then between 11 and the age of 18, I was bounced back and forth between my parents. They both were having severe problems, multiple relationships, My mother, by the time I was 18, had been married 4 times. My father was on his third marriage shortly after, well, I think 20 or 21, but he had 2 marriages. His second marriage was a woman who was only 10 years older than me, so that was challenging. Um, anyway, I was bounced back and forth between parents. Um, Told all kinds of things, that I was too difficult, too much to handle. Yet I was a straight A, or almost a straight A student. I didn't get in trouble in school. It's just that I made comments about what was going on at home, and that wasn't appreciated. Um, anyway, I got married when I was 18 years old. Yeah, following in my parents' footsteps. But I didn't get pregnant until I was 20. But I just wanted out of the home, and I married another person who had a lot of needs. And again, I became a caretaker like I had been all through my parents. I was my brother's caretaker in many ways through my growing up years. All through my childhood and beyond, I was always commented about that I was too loud, too fast, too smart, too questioning, too emotional, too sensitive, and that in many ways it came across as there was something wrong with me because I was different than them. And that was hard because all I wanted to do was please them. And I made great efforts at that. I graduated with a 3.66 from high school, despite not having a lot of support through help of any tangible kind. I was in a Miss United teenager pageant when I was 17 years old. I was in drama and choir and swim team, and I was involved. Nobody was backing me, but I was involved. It seemed like the right thing to do because the people that I wanted to be like, that's what they did. But I was always missing something, and it always felt a little off. Anyway, so fast forward, I got married, and in 1985, I had a child who was born and died 4 days later, 36 years ago, and 3 days from today. That's when I was first prescribed a benzodiazepine. It was when my son died, and they gave me Valium and said it would be a good idea to take it. And it was prescribed appropriately, really. And then a few years passed, and things continued to deteriorate in my marriage, in my life. I had another child, which was lovely. I had my daughter, but my husband was having affairs and was struggling with addiction issues that I didn't know about, and it wasn't good. And anyway, our marriage deteriorated to the point of coming to an end, and I went out on my own, and I had 3 children under the age of 6 by myself, and I wasn't getting any support, and I wasn't having anyone help me, and I started having panic attacks. I'd always had some anxiety because, I probably had PTSD that was undiagnosed because of some of the really heinous things that I witnessed and dealt with in my childhood and teen years, which I really glossed over a lot of stuff, but there was some, blood and guts and police and all kinds of stuff. So, here I am, becoming a single mom and doing it all by myself, and it was hard, and I started having panic attacks. So I was prescribed Xanax. What a wonderful thing that was those days. I felt so bad, and the first Xanax I had in the emergency room after 15 minutes was the calmest I'd been in a decade. And I took them appropriately, and it was okay. And then things continued, and I had some injuries, and opiates were prescribed. And then I started getting depressed, being a single mom, and some other things had happened. So then an antidepressant was added. Then I got a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So a whole bunch of anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxers and sleeping medications like Ambien were added. So I was on a whole bunch of meds, and things weren't going very well for me in 1998, and I made some significant changes and tapered those meds down and lost a bunch of weight and became more active and was doing better and got myself into nursing school after a period of time, and a whole bunch of relationships and marriages and other stuff and more drama and trauma. But I got into nursing school, and I did nursing school and became a nurse. And I had some real hard times in nursing school. I mean, I had some real emotional challenged times, but I wasn't alone. There was other people that had those too. So I didn't feel like I was the oddball. Then I started working as a nurse, and I started having some injuries, and my son went to Iraq, and that was really scary. And I had struggles with my other son, who was an addict, and I had struggles with my parents and my children and my ex. And often I would go to the doctor and tell them that I couldn't sleep, or that I was in pain, or that I was anxious. And so medications became the standard. Isn't that the way it goes in the United States primarily? That's where I live. They don't suggest dietary changes. They don't suggest counseling, or if they do, it's very surface. They don't say, wow, sounds like you're going through a lot. Maybe someone to talk to or some support could help. They just write out a prescription. So fast forward to 2010, that went off and on for like 15, 20 years on, I couldn't, one medication led to another, led to more side effects, like couldn't be able to sleep, worsening anxiety, worsening pain, worsening inflammation, muscle spasms, blah, 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 blah. And then in 2010, I had an injury, and I was only on a couple medications. I think I was at that time on Effexor and Ativan, PRN, and oxycodone or Percocet. I could have like 2 Percocet a day. Well, I got injured at work as a nurse. And in 2011, my doctor said that I could no longer work, that I was disabled from pain and problems. I had bursitis, I had back problems, bulging discs, I had irritable bowel syndrome, I had migraines. I had all kinds of things. And they just said, you're done. And that's when the medications really started. They tried giving me OxyContin. I wonder if I can find the letter that I wrote to the doctor 4 days after taking that. I was like, oh, if you think I can function on this garbage, you're out of your competent mind. I can't do anything. So if you're trying to send me to work as a nurse on this, somebody's got to tell me the legalities, because this is not feeling right at all. Yeah, it was. So it became apparent that, what they had to offer for help for what was going on with me was taking me away from life. And between 2010 and 2015 were some really sad years where I deteriorated to where I was bedridden. I walked with a cane. I fell down a lot. I was overweight. I was suicidal. I was in bed all the time. I hurt all the time. All I did was talk about how bad I hurt, how bad my life was, how horrible everybody was. It was full of negativity, full of inflammation of my psyche, as well as inflammation of my body. And I'd been dealing with undiagnosed chronic PTSD, complex chronic PTSD that hadn't really been treated. In fact, it really hadn't ever been addressed because I didn't even know how to talk about those things. I'd been in counseling offices off and on all those years, but I didn't even know how to address these things because these were things that weren't to be discussed, right? They were embarrassing. They were survival. I did a lot of things in those years of my late 20s and 30s trying to escape my pain, trying to figure out how to survive. Things I'm not necessarily proud of. However, when I look at it, here I am. I survived. When you are working from a point of trauma, when your amygdala has been on fire and you have been in fight, flight, or freeze mode since you were in single digits till you were 50 plus years old, that takes a toll. And medications is what allopathic medicine has to provide for that toll. And I came from a background where you trusted Western medicine. You followed what the doctors said. So that's what I did. I followed doctor's orders. I did what my family said. You need to be medicated. You have a chemical imbalance. You're not normal. There's something wrong with you. So I subscribed to that, to the point where I didn't want to be me at all anymore. It's really easy to be a people pleaser, intelligent, science motivated, and have a history of trauma and make choices without the full understanding of how it's all going to wash out. You're just trying to check in. You're just trying to feel a little bit better so you can go to work, so you can take care of your kids, so you can get out of bed. That's all I wanted to do was get out of bed. So I was a really good patient for a really long time. I followed doctor's orders. I listened to my family because something was wrong with me, right? Me being me, my feeling, emotional, intelligent, quick, loud self was wrong. So I was trying to make it right because I wanted to make everybody happy. And it led to me wanting to die, to being more sick, to being where I was too embarrassed to even be around people. And so I withdrew. I found reasons. I battled. I pushed away everyone that I loved. And they didn't want to be around me because I was being weird. Well, when you're going through what I went through after all of that, and even during it, you get to where you don't want to be around those people. And I understand, and yet I don't, because I see what happened prior to me getting so sick, and I saw how my parents were treated and how other people were treated when they were having struggles, and they didn't get the same discarding, abandoning, judgmentalness that I got. But that's how it felt for me. Maybe they did and I didn't see it. I don't know. I only walk in my shoes. But it was really hard to swallow that everybody thought there was something wrong with me, and that I was altered and needed to be restrained with medications, because that's what psychiatric medications are intended to do, is to restrain you. They really are. They're meant to control your thoughts and your behaviors, and that's what my people around me thought should happen to me, is that I should have that all controlled. It led to me being really sad and really sick. And suicidal and a lot of other things. It didn't get what anybody told me it was going to get, just like a whole lot of other things that have happened in my life. I was told if you're a good girl, you go to school, you get good grades, you don't get pregnant, you do la-di-da-di-da-di-da, you'll have a great life. Well, I did all those things. I really did. I was a good student. I didn't get pregnant. I went to church. I followed my parents' orders. I was a very good girl. It didn't work out how it was told to be. And that's life. You can prepare and prepare and prepare, and you can think if you're doing all the right things, it's going to turn out a certain way, but it turns out how it's going to turn out. That's how it turns out, and we just have to live with it. Anyway, that is how the medication madness began. That's part 1 of this 3-part series that will be posted one segment per week up until New Year's. I thank everybody for watching all these years since I started this channel just over 5 years ago. I'm grateful for every person that it's inspired, which still blows my mind every time you all say that I am inspiring, because I'm still just trying to do what I can do. But if this helps you, yay for all of us. I'll keep doing it.